nominate individuals to represent him in the over 200 districts across the country. And they will also point you to what the processes ought to be after the nominations have been done by the President of the Republic as regards how an individual can be passed to become the MCE or DCE of a certain district or municipality or metropolitan area. What happens after 3 failed attempts? We will tell you that, and then we'll get into that conversation with Dr. Richard Fiadomo, the president of the Chamber of Local Government Practitioners, and also Professor Bafo Ajimandria is a former UN governance expert. Do you have an MC or DCE yet? If you do not have one, you should be interested in this conversation. What is keeping you from getting your MC or DCE? What have you heard? What do you know? What are you anxious about? It's all in the conversation that will come right after these messages here on Sunrise on 3FM 92.7. My name is Johnny Hughes. Thank you for staying with us, and thank you for allowing us to serve you breakfast every now and then. Let the song inspire you. We'll see you right after the break.
Electroland Extravaganza Easter Promotion no Emanin Chow Water na wunya discounts ewa ye Samsung Easter Promotion na ye Media Easter Bonanza ni die deals a hodu obebre say adie ubenya Nasco Bena efui 499 Ghana cedis na so 1599 cedis a ubenya 32-inch Nasco LED TV na ye Nasco top mount freezers ni die e start free 1799 Ghana cedis na ye Nasco chest freezer
3FM 92.7. Let's head straight to the Ashanti region, where there's been some what they call pinching in the Akan language, some disturbances. Mampong district certainly are not happy about the person that the President of the Republic has nominated for them. We know that in the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, the 1992 Constitution, there's basis. The President is the man who has the authority at any given time to nominate an individual to be the representative of the central government or of the executive. First, let's listen to a report by Ibrahim Abubakar in the Ashanti region. He's a man in Ashanti region and beyond. Ibrahim.
Apart from the Kumasi mayor, the president is here to nominate MMDCEs for the remaining 42 assemblies in the Ashanti region. The prolonged delay has left residents frustrated, with many complaining that the absence of appointed leaders is stalling critical development projects in their communities. The uncertainty has also fueled agitation among supporters of some MMDCE hopefuls, leading to destruction of party properties. In response, the Ashanti Regional Minister and head of the Regional Security Council, Dr. Frank Amwakwene, has cautioned the aggrieved factions to wait and respect the nomination of the president.
Any riot whatsoever goes definitely there entirely at the president. The president will make the appointments, and we would work with the appointments that the president make. No one will be allowed to force our hands to choose someone else for the president. The president will make the appointment. We are expecting it soon. We only call for calm and call for support for whoever the president names, so that we will be able to, as it were, move the country forward.
He also warned them not to take the laws into their hands.
I have put the security on red alert, and I've told each and every one, whoever is a party member, that don't go and misbehave and shield or hide behind any party colors. And I've also picked information that others are mobilizing to support aggrieved candidates. Some people want to cry more than they believed and just clad themselves in party paraphernalia and go out there and misbehave as though they are aggrieved party supporters who are misbehaving. Crime knows no color. If you want to take the laws into your own hands, you will make sure that we crack the whip and make sure that we prosecute him. So that should be a benchmark for anyone who has in mind that when the names come, they would want to go out there and then misbehave. That when you are found at the wrong side of the law, definitely don't come to our offices begging. Because if you do that, you are disgracing the president, you are disgracing the party, and you are disgracing Madagana and our democracy. And we are not going to be tolerant when it comes to these issues.
The best in the morning is on 92.7 Sunrise on 3FM.
That was Dr. Frank Amwakwene. He's the regional minister for the Ashanti region. He's given his marching orders. But if you take a look at the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, and Helen will guide us through that quickly, there's Article 243 that talks about the powers of the president to find us MMDCEs or DCEs or MCEs in the 261 districts. What does the law say, Helen?
Certainly, Johnny. Let me take you to Article 243 of our 1992 Constitution. It says, 1. There shall be a district chief executive for every district who shall be appointed by the president with prior approval of not less than 2/3 majority of members at the assembly present and voting at the meeting. 2. The district chief executive shall A. preside at meetings of the executive committee of the assembly. B. Be responsible for the day-to-day performance of the executive and administrative functions of the district assembly. And C. Be the chief representative of the central government in the district. 3. The office of district chief executive shall become vacant if A. a vote of no confidence supported by the votes of not less than 2/3 of all members of the district assembly is passed against him, or B. he is removed from office by the president, or C. he resigns or dies.
This is very clear. Osixtus, you help us because this is simple and plain English, right?
There's no
ambiguity about it.
About this.
So if you are in, you are part of it. You are part of it. If you are not part of it, you are not part of it. It's very simple.
If they are approving you, they are approving you. If they are not confirming, they are not confirming.
Right, and it would take what three times, 2/3. Yeah,
2/3. You need to get a 2/3 majority of the members present and voting.
But if you do not get that 2/3 at 3 consecutive times,
so then 3 rounds of votes. If you fail to get that on all 3 rounds of voting, then it means that they have to go back to the presidency for a renomination. We saw in the past that some people lost all 3 counts.
Right.
Came back.
The Suhum case, for example, is that giving you people money, the OSP got involved, etc.
So we've seen where it's instances where it's clear that the presidency seemed to have an interest in a particular person or individual. And so the person loses all 3 rounds of votes, and the assembly reverts to the presidency, and the same person is sent back. So you either confirm this person or you are not getting anybody else. We've seen that. We've also seen in some instances where, because of the chaos that is involved, and this chaos is usually because you have 2 rival persons or factions internally who are competing for this. And so where that happens, we've seen instances where the president would go outside of the 2 contending factions to bring a completely different person. We've seen that one too before. So in the cases that we are seeing in Ashanti region, for instance, if it is that Helen is the one who has been presented, but the people are actually asking for Crosby, but the president says, I believe in women empowerment. It is Helen who has to be your person, based on the quota system that I want to give. Then the people say, no, Helen is not a party person, number one. Those are the reasons you often will hear. Helen is not a party person. Helen doesn't know the grassroots of the constituency. Helen cannot relate with the people. If Helen becomes MCE or DCE, the party will lose the election in that particular area because Helen cannot galvanize people, rally the people, cannot work to impress the people, to give the party another round.
But you see, again, if you look at this, the Act 936 talks about the specific functions of the assembly. We'll come to that. The erstwhile government faced a similar situation.
Yes.
Where in the second term of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Dr. Bawumia's leadership, they had to wait for 9 months, contrary to Act 936, to be able to get MMDCEs at post. That was when we saw Henry Cortes, bravado, because he could crisscross into places. As soon as the MMDCEs come, your regional minister's job is to coordinate, and so you couldn't do majority of those things. I remember so well that the Dambuche committee at the time did 3 sets of vetting. There was vetting that was done at the district level, shortlisted people, brought them to the Jubilee House, and then they had another sifting process. So there were 3, or in some cases 4, levels of vetting for the people who they thought were qualified to lead. And then also I remember that report had what they called the triangle.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
That the triangle would represent the party, the central government, and the assembly.
The assembly.
Right? So that's what Sixtus is talking about. In some of the instances, for example, in the Greater Accra region, the AMA, Niaje Soa, who was the chief executive, was rejected, though the committee that did the vet, the Dambuche committee, approved him. We all saw how Elizabeth Kwachusaki performed after Niaje Soa subsequently, right? So these processes are very important. While you want to satisfy the constitution and the relevant laws that govern these things, you also want to play within the party ball. But at this stage of the nation, you're not just looking at patronage and partisan people. You're looking at people who can actually, deal with the the issues of the assembly. Some assemblies don't have, maybe street lights problem, but they may have a lot of unemployment issues and sanitation issues. So if you go and pick somebody who is just interested in coming to rehash that we have done street lights for you, the people will not be too happy about it
at all.
And so it gives the president a lot of pressure, right, to deal with some of these things. However, it is no excuse for the president of the day or the regime of the day to delay everybody. Because as it sits now, the functions of the district assembly, per Act 936, right, section 12 of page 19 says, a district assembly shall exercise political and administrative authority in the district. Now, promote local economic development, and C, provide guidance, give direction to, and supervise other administrative authorities in the district as may be prescribed by law. And then 2, a district assembly shall exercise deliberative, legislative, and executive functions. Without limiting subsections 1 and 2, a district assembly shall be responsible for the overall development of the district, formulate and execute plans, programs, and strategies for the effective mobilization of resources necessary for the overall development of the district. C, promote and support productive activity and social development in the district and remove any obstacle to initiative and development. D, sponsor the education of students, initiate programs. It talks about being responsible for development. So there's a tall list of what a DCE must do, or an MCE must do. And then it even brings on who is qualified in the specific act, sound mind and all those things that
one is there.
Yeah, that is here. So it's here. So now you find that you can't just pick anybody because the person is a party person, or the person is a sponsor of the party, or the person is a loyalist, or the person comes from the place, or the person just do and throw the person in there at all.
Johnny, if you would allow, let me read to you Section 7 of the Local Governance Act.
The Sound Mind Party.
Yes. A person qualifies to be elected or appointed to a district assembly if the person is a citizen of Ghana of not less than 18 years of age, is a registered voter, is ordinarily resident in the district in which the person seeks election or for whose district assembly the person is to be appointed, and has paid all taxes and rates or made arrangements satisfactory to the appropriate authority for the payment of the taxes and rates. Now, it goes ahead to explain what it means that a person is ordinarily a resident if within the 4 years before the election or the appointment, that person has lived in the district for an aggregate period of not less than 12 months. Then more qualifications. A person is not qualified to be elected or appointed a member of the district assembly if that person is of unsound mind. What is unsound mind? Has been sentenced to death or imprisonment for an offense involving fraud, dishonesty, or violence, or has been convicted of an offense under the enactment in force in the Republic, a person against whom adverse findings have been made by a competent authority, and then being a professional person is disqualified from practicing that profession on grounds of malpractice, fraud, or dishonesty. So these are some of the things, the qualifications or disqualifications of a member of the district assembly.
This one is a taller now.
And you see, that tells you how seriously the law takes.
That's right.
The office of the chief executive.
Charlie, you are a representative of the president.
You are a big man.
You are a big man in the district.
I mean, I was looking at this. So you are the chief representative of the central government in the district.
The district.
Who said chair?
So you must be somebody who connects well with the people.
Yeah.
And it's not just about development. It's also about, unfortunately for us, it's also about ensuring that the goodwill that the president enjoys at the local level, the party enjoys at the local level, that you sustain that goodwill, you build upon that goodwill. But if you are somebody who the people, you as my people will say, you don't stop to greet anybody, you are on your own horse, you in
an air-conditioned Fiat, you drive through the town,
you roll up,
you don't leave all the pressure on the
funerals.
You don't go to funerals. Those little things matter to us. You see, so if you cannot do those things, then you can't be the MMDC.
Even job, what I read earlier, even job creation, Helen. Even job creation
and paying fees.
No, but those ones are from the common fund.
Right.
But even job creation and innovation that develops the district, because the way a district, a municipality, or a metropolitan area is defined by the size of the economy, is defined by the population, is defined by many other parameters. So let's say that your district is worth maybe 15 million cedis a month, and your only job was to have been a factory hand somewhere. If you see 50 million, you will shake. But you are the party person who, the people, the influencers within the catchment area have been able to push up, and now you have the job. If you don't take care, by the end of the 4-year tenure, you would not have achieved anything. You would have been bullied all the way through, because mind you, the district assembly is comprised of all the assembly members, some unit committee members, some nominees of the president. You also have the member of parliament as an ex officio. So it's a well packed like parliament. If you are not so careful, they could be taking decisions and then bringing it to you at the ESCO level to implement, and before you know it, you would have messed up everything. Now look at section 20 of the act. Maybe Helen, you help us to go through it. Section 20 of the act.
All right, let's take a look at
Chief Executive.
Section 21. Now, there shall be a district chief executive for each district appointed by the president with the prior approval of not less than 2/3 majority of the members of the district assembly present and voting at the meeting. Now, okay, so shall I go over that again?
Go back to his job. This is his KPI.
All right.
And his job description.
Now, a district chief executive shall preside at meetings of the executive committee of the district assembly, and in the absence of the district chief executive, a member of the executive committee elected by the members present from among themselves shall preside. B, be responsible for the day-to-day performance of the executive and administrative functions of the district assembly. C, be responsible for the supervision of the departments of the district assembly. And D, be the chief representative of the central government in the district.
Okay. So this is your job, right? If you do not have the capacity, day-to-day management, administration, finance, and HR, you are managing people. If you don't have the capacity, forget about it. Now, you are also supposed to preside over ESCO. Mind you that the DCE himself or the MCE himself is not, for want of a better expression, a legitimate member of the assembly. When they meet, it is the presiding member of the assembly who is an assembly member from amongst them who is elected to head. Right, so he becomes a speaker. So the DCE is there chairing the ESCO. When they take their decisions, they bring that implement for us. So let's say they say that, okay, we want to build 12 hospitals in the district, and then they decide at the assembly, and then they bring it to you. Do you have the financial capacity to build it? The timelines, all those things. Have you done the needs assessment, etc.? If it comes to you and you do not have the capacity to think through it properly, to send it back, because you can send it back to them for them to look at, and then you just keep approving everything. It will get to a point where the things that matter, for example, patching potholes and all of that, will now be left to the central government. And that is why you go into many districts and you find that people are paying property rate, business operation permit, all those things, and they have never seen a tarred road before. They have never seen a gutter before. They have not seen, proper security in their corner before. They have not seen all those things that a proper society must have. The MCE just goes away. There's no football playing field or children's playing area. There's no chips compound, nothing. And most of these things are the job of the assembly to do. The decentralization concept that we give onto ourselves, I don't think that we as a country are even feathering that whole mindset. Because if somebody has a little problem at the district level, he says Oman Penyin. If somebody has a small problem, he says MP. Their jobs are well cut out for them. There's a reason the MP is only an ex-official member of the district assembly. So if you have a problem and then you jump straight to the Oman Penyin, then you're worrying yourself.
Is that why the argument is made for DCEs to be elected? And that one, whether we do it on party lines or non-party lines, is always up for debate. But there are many Ghanaians who ascribe these duties to their members of parliament. They really think that it's their NP. And for myself, for the longest time, I thought this was the job of my MP, not only because they come and promise these things, but because of that mystery surrounding DCE. You always hear DCE, DCE, but how powerful they are, the ordinary Ghanaian, I think, has no clue. So that if your DCE was easily identifiable, the same way when your MP is in town, you are chasing them for this development, this pothole, that clearly, that clear face would mean that people would then be chasing after DCE. DCE, come and check this one, as opposed to the MPs whose sole focus is to be parlaying and making up laws. Now you conflate the two jobs and it becomes very murky. Should we be voting for our DCE so that they have that better connection with the community? We voted for you, but to separate it from party lines is where I don't think we can do.
You see,
yes,
I support the idea of voting for MMDCs.
Okay,
this whole Act 936 was birthed out of this whole concept of decentralization. The moment you put a partisan slap on it, you have centralized it again, because now people are looking at NDC and MPP, PPP, CPP. They are not looking at their district anymore. But another function of the DCE is that, look, he is the district security boss.
The district level elections are politicized anyway.
They are politicized.
You see the color of the posters.
But they're even beginning to use party colors in their campaigns.
No, they've been using it since 90 Kojo. But the point is that, should we encourage it? Because I remember when the promise was made to us, I think in 2014 or 2015, when then the candidate Akufo-Addo, who later became president, made that promise. There was no talk about Article 55.3, which is an entrenched clause in the Constitution, which requires a referendum and all those things to change. There was no talk about politicizing district, and it's there. Maybe 6 of you help us. It's there. There was no talk about it. We're just looking at Article 2431 to clear this and finish and go away. So that where it says that the president shall nominate, we'll leave it and we'll just go to Parliament and correct it and says we shall elect MMDCs going forward. And that could have been done in a day, right? Because in the first instance, when MPP won power in 2016, they had 169 members of Parliament. NDC had 106 members of parliament. The minority could have shouted all they could, like now the minority is doing. But if the majority wants to do something, they will go ahead and do it. Have your say, let me have my way. Now, fast forward. We have gone to the point where we had even a minister for local government accusing MMDCs of partaking in Galamsey. Haji Alima Mahama, she said that.
Yes.
Some of those persons, and we saw their areas and how Galamsey had survived and thrived and flourished, and some of them got another go to become MMDCs.
In the second term.
It's an endorsement that they can go ahead as long as the top is happy with them, everybody is happy. But are the people in the district happy with them? Because if you are the district chief executive and you are the district security boss, the security and safety of the people must be your paramount concern. If they can't find water to drink, cattle are disturbing their farms and destroying them, people are coming in there, Galamseyers wielding guns and machetes and threatening to shoot them. Cocoa farmers have their farms surrounded, it's being dug around. They have no option but to sell their livelihoods off and sit and put their hands in between their ties and all of that. And you are not concerned about it, then you are not fit for purpose. So that if in Sixtus's beloved Ulu, we say, okay, we are looking for candidates, and Sixtus qualifies per what Crosby has really qualifies. He puts himself out. He is not going to aspire on the ticket of NDC or MPP. He is going to aspire because he is qualified. And the bane that we have had in most of the places in this country is that, let's say, a stronghold of the MPP now, where you have a DCE, he would look at assembly areas within the districts where the NDC doesn't get votes and channel resources there and stuff there so that in the next elections they will use it as a campaign and come and take you off the MPship. And we know this happens, not just NDC, MPP, they all do it to themselves. So as a country, we need to properly sit down and say, do we want to centralize everything or do we really want to decentralize? I don't see why it has to take a regional minister or a central government minister to come and tell us that cattle should not be roaming around. It's a DCE's job. But then, because the DCE is not, nobody queues to vote for the DCE, he doesn't go to appeal to anybody. If there are only 23 people within the assembly, he only needs to convince the 23 people.
He needs to give the 23 people money.
As for those who are
they said it's called thank you for wasting time
yes,
on
but thank you for doing
wasting time on me.
But as for the people who are being nominated by the president, come and join the assembly, you know, the MP is a stronghold of the party, and you know you have those ones covered, right? If I have to just convince that small sect of people to make me the DC or MC, what am I doing with the millions of you within the area? But the MP has to go through the trouble, because as soon as he wins power today, he knows that the next election in 2028 is waiting. If he doesn't attend the funerals, if he's not concerned about the children's education, security, he doesn't meddle in affairs that doesn't matter to him, just to remain relevant and be in the eyes of the people, he knows he will lose. So they do everything while the DCs who are supposed to be doing those jobs,
they get to take a back seat.
They get away with murder.
Johnny, some small problem that I see from the election here. So if we are to elect these people not on the political line, not on partisan basis, it means they'll have to campaign.
Right.
They'll have to appeal to the people. Now, what resources would they use for the campaign? Where would they get the money from to go and convince the people to vote? The district, some have a lot of assemblies under them. Some have huge number of populations. It is also specified in the local governance act what goes into the constitution of a district and all of that. So if this person is spending X amount of money, now we know that about $650,000, close to 10 million cedis for an MP, maybe half of that. So maybe 5 million cedis for a DC election. Where is Sixtus getting the money from? If the person has to go and ask well-to-do people, kind of in the district, they'll also have kind of expectations of him when he becomes
something.
Exactly.
That's right.
So it is inadvertently going back to the link with political parties that okay, I'll come as non-partisan. I don't have money, but I'll come alone. But the MPP will be behind me to fund me. The NDC will be behind me to fund me, and then it brings all this conversation back again. We're losing the essence.
We may have the opportunity to correct this monetization problem with the district level elections.
That's also possible. That is because if we the
the NDC tried to do that. The MPP also tried to do that in the last primaries that they both held.
Yes.
Where they congregated everybody at one location. We are doing the elections today. So in the past, you would have, we'll congregate here, we'll do this one here, then we'll go and congregate here. And so people use this as a means to start asking for it. You come to them, you want to appeal to them and say, give us this. You come to them, you want to appeal to say, give. So by the time they finish maybe 4 or 5 cycles of elections, just to get a national, regional elections, properly done, people would have cashed out.
That's right.
All right. So a lot more people were not happy about it. And then also the political parties also thought of, okay, why don't we expand the electoral college and not limit to a few people who will be cashing out?
That way, it makes it more difficult for you to actually now
identifiable people. Yes.
Now be paying everybody because you simply cannot do that.
Let every card-bearing member of the party vote.
Yes.
That way, you are unable to go around pay everybody.
You just have to give up and say.
You want a flag bearer. Let every card-bearing member of the party vote for the flag bearer.
Look at Section 5. We'll go to our guest in a bit. Section 5 of Act 936. It says the district assembly shall consist of the following members. 1. The district chief executive. B. 1 person from each electoral area within the district elected by universal adult suffrage in accordance with regulations made by the purpose by the Electoral Commission. C. The member or members of parliament from the constituencies that fall within the area of authority of the district assembly. So in this case, AMA will have Okankwe South, will have Ablekuma South as well, as members.
Okay.
And then you have other members that shall not exceed 30% of the total membership of the district assembly appointed by the president in consultation with the traditional authorities and other interest groups in the district. A member of parliament shall be counted among the 70% in the calculation of the 30% of the appointed members and not have voting rights. So you see, the people here, if they decide to tilt the scale in favor of one person, just because they like the person or they think the person is a party person, whatever it is, Agbina, the whole community gets to suffer because they are the power brokers.
Anyway, that is why for every assembly member or member of an assembly who gets to take part in this exercise, know that you owe a duty to the entire district or metropolitan or municipal area. That your job is not to the individual that you are voting for, that you are considering the general interest of the people. This person whose name has been put to you is the person able to mobilize resources within the local area. Is the person able to pursue development, infrastructure, physical, whatever form of development it is the person able to create? That's the word, create. Not necessarily sitting down waiting for central government.
That's where the innovation comes in.
That's where the innovation comes in. That the person must be able to tailor from within local raw materials something that would inure to the benefits of the people. So if this person whose name has been given you as your MCE is not the person that you think has the capacity to do this, then don't vote for the person.
Well, let's go on to the phone line. Professor Bafo Ajimandria is a former senior UN governance advisor. He's joining us along with Dr. Richard Fiadomo. He's the president of the Chamber for Local Governance. Prof. Doc, good morning. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, my brother. For having me.
Great. Prof, let me begin with you. We seem to be having these hiccups and pockets of trouble every time the conversations about getting a DC or MCE, comes up. President will nominate the person. It gets there. We're told that some vetting has happened along partisan lines. And then it gets to the point where they have to be endorsed. And then you find chaos in many places. What are we not getting right?
Good question. We are not getting right. We have to go to the Constitution, which has created a local governance system, which in actual fact is not local government, but still central government system. In other words, the whole notion of decentralization that we practice has become more of risk centralization, because the central government is not giving much empowerment to local people to be the masters of their development. And I'll explain this. If you look at the Constitution, the way it's structured, it makes a lot of sense, because it talks about unit heads, unit elections, and the district assembly and all. But all of us know that these things are not working. All of us know that even though the Constitution said that to be non-partisan, it is still partisan. And then, of course, the whole idea of developing people has been given almost exclusively to the central government. So the district structures are not working the way they were designed to work. In fact, you are just citing the current problems we are having with appointment of DCs and MCs. It's been happening over the years.
That's correct.
Happening over the years. Some party members go forward to burn their offices and all kinds of issues. And I think that's why, under President Mills, the idea of really trying to bring decentralization to its logical conclusion was recommended by the then Constitutional Review Committee. But as you know, when the recommendations were made, that particular aspect, which received overwhelming endorsement of Ghanaians, and Professor Tubuga was the secretary to that committee, he can tell you, it's in the book also.
Right.
That particular item was almost sidelined by the then government. They rather proposed something counter to what the committee had recommended, that instead of electing DCs and MCs, we should rather have 3 people, including government nominee or something like that, for the government to choose one. So it's still back to re-centralization. And of course, that recommendation died the natural death. Under Kufuor, an attempt was made.
Right.
But for me, it wasn't a wholehearted attempt. Because in the end, we said Parliament failed to endorse it, so they withdrew. But the issue is this. Simply electing a DCE or MCE will not solve the problem. Because there are 3 aspects of decentralization. 3 together is what makes sense. One is administrative decentralization, which I think we have achieved to a very large extent, even though the central government still appoints these administrators in the district. 2, we have what we call fiscal decentralization, that's money matters, which means the local assemblies should have the power to have their budget, raise the funds, of course, supplemented by central government funds, for them to plan their development. Money should be controlled at the district. Still, the district rely on the central government to give its portions of certain money. At times, for 6 months, the central government has not released the funds, even though they have. So the central government still controls the fiscal issues in the district. The third one is what we call the political decentralization, which comes to elections.
Right.
Okay. Now, if you look at the way we operate, we are not achieving any of them to their fullest extent. And we have politicized the whole thing that, and now coming to the current problem, that party members, once the party wins, they go and take over things. So I think we are serious about decentralizing for people to become the center of their development. You see, this whole thing is about the progress of people. And I don't think we should continue a situation where little things to be done in the districts are still commanded or steered or directed by the central government. I see outside the central government, there are no capable individuals who can think and work and achieve goals. Okay, so I think we have to take this in serious. Now we have another constitutional review coming.
Right.
I'm hoping they will take this into serious consideration.
Great. Dr. Fiadomo, let me bring you into the conversation now and ask you, again, what your opinion will be. Should we be proceeding on the basis that this should not be politicized, the election, or should we be proceeding on the basis that it is already happening in the shadows at the various district and assembly areas, so we should go ahead and proceed on getting our MMDCEs elected, but on partisan line? Where do you stand as a chamber?
Yeah, thank you very much. For me, election of MMDCEs is a necessary evil, and it has to happen at all costs, possibly in this term of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. Like Prof. rightly said, the decentralization that we are currently practicing is akin to somebody selling a cow to you and still holding on to the tail. The cow can only go in circles. What we have seen over the years is that the central government and people within central government have vested interest in some local government areas because they know about their fiscal decentralization issues and monies, as Prof spoke about. Because if we even want to elect MMDCs, a lot of structures will have to change. Because we have a situation whereby the very same constitution that talked about decentralization also now had a fund that is centralized. That's the DACF. Now, we all saw what happened in the immediate past administration where now the common fund is no longer released to the assemblies. It is used, procurement is done for and on their behalf. And that is what gave birth to this so-called DRIP, which we have in the system. Now, DRIP has now become a central government entity, whereas they are supposed to be operating in the assemblies. Now we have a national DRIP coordinator who now sits somewhere in Accra, now takes decision on how this DCE or an MMDA within Zabzugu Tatale should even operate their own fleet of cars to repair their roads and other things. So for me, I think that if you also look at the local government service, another centralized institution, why should it be the local government service employing me and sending me to Keta, for example, to go and work? Whereas I do not have any interest in the place that I'm going to, except for the fact that my salary is not paid by the assembly, it is paid by the consolidated fund, which is also centralized. So for me, I think that yes, we need the election. As to whether it should be partisan or non-partisan, for me, we will go for the non-partisan for a pilot to see how things are going to work. Because you see, the fact that I may be a known NDC member, NPP member, CPP member, and even a constituency executive, and I go to the assembly itself is non-partisan. So on the floor of the House, nothing partisan is done there. But my political allegiance or identity may be known openly. During the elections, Electoral Commission sometimes is also not doing what they have to do, because it is clear that no candidate or should do anything or use colors that will show that it is NDC or MPP or CPP. But sometimes it happens and the Electoral Commission does not crack the whip, so it becomes a normal thing that is also done. So for me, we need the election, but if it has to be partisan, the question is, now it's just in recent times we have heard that assembly members are going to be paid some allowances. Political parties, for them, they are there to run for elections and also win power and govern. So the question is, Article 55 Clause 3 of Ghana's Constitution is saying that the local government system should not be made partisan. And what it means is that election at the local level, and the local level elections as we have it today, is unit committee and assembly elections. So immediately we talk about partisanship, we cannot isolate election of chief executives and make it partisan and the other one remains non-partisan. So it means that 55-3 through a referendum will have to be amended and they will now go full partisan. And if you are going full partisan, what it also means is that no political party will want to invest in anybody going for unit committee member. Because the unit committee members are not paid anything. In fact, the only time we hear about them is when they are being elected. After that, sometimes no capacity building training for the. So we should look at the pros and cons very well. Because political parties, they are also engaged in some form of business, because they are also investing and they expect a return on investment. So if you are going to invest in an assembly member, for example, that they should go partisan, and then you are going to pay them an allowance per the calculation that we have done per the 100 million for assembly members in the budget, is each person will be taking less than 1,000 Ghana cedis. So will the political party invest in someone who will be earning 1,000 Ghana cedis? Another irony of the situation is the fact that we have members of parliament. Your earlier speaker spoke about it. They are not bona fide members of the House.
That's right.
They do not have a voting right.
That's
Yet
right.
they control a fund called MP share of the common fund. Yet they are not development agents. Not too long ago, we had members of parliament telling us that they are allocating $250,000 Ghana cedis to each MP to go and monitor development projects. Yet MPs are not procurement entities. The assemblies are. Assemblies have engineering departments. They have quantity surveyors. They have building inspectors and all that. So how is it that an assembly will award a contract and it has to take an MP to go and supervise that contract when that MP's office is only made up of a research assistant or a personal assistant? What technical eye are they going to use? So, yes, we say decentralization, like Prof rightly said, we are not practicing decentralization as we speak.
I see.
Because you realize that when it comes to fiscal decentralization, the common fund is centralized. The monies that go to the assembly, even the government through the finance minister even comes out with a policy guideline as to how the assembly should even spend their IGF.
Right.
So that is where we are. And if we have to go for the election, which I believe must happen, there are a lot of constitutional amendments and some bodies must cease to exist. But I don't see for the life of me that a common fund administrator said there, as we are speaking, NDC is in government. So an NDC member is the common fund administrator. Now you will see that KMA and certain places are MPP strongholds. MPP persons are going to win and be there. Now they are entitled to a common fund. They will begin to see that common fund will now be going to use to do politics because that fund administrator will want his government to stay in power. So they will be releasing the funds to areas that they feel they can win or districts that they feel they can win. And then the other districts will be suffering. So yes, partisanship can happen, but for me, I do not think we should start with partisanship for now.
Great. Now, Prof, let me bring you back into the conversation. And I'll go back to the vetting issues. I know that in the second term of President Akufo-Addo, for example, we had to wait for 9 solid months before we got our MMDCEs. Here in this administration, 3 months have come and gone, and we are still waiting for MMDCEs in certain areas. You mentioned administrative and financial, etc. We do know that Act 936 provides for the MMDCs to chair the ESCO, and then they will act on the decisions taken by the assemblies. The assemblies will take their decision, but who is going to implement them really? They are not present. So how does the district go forward?
You see, your question raises a bunch of issues that will suggest strongly that we have to move quickly to truly decentralize our government. I think the previous speaker made some excellent points.
Right.
Showing how we should move on. You see, the funny thing is that Ghanaians, many a time we are like ostriches, eh? We pretend like nothing is happening. A lot of things are happening. First, this idea of election, whether it should be partisan or not. I agree to a extent with my friend, but the reality is that we cannot have non-partisan elections in this country, period.
Why, Prof?
Because this country, to this point, is embedded in it these two political parties. Everything we do in this country is political. So if you say it's non-partisan, what you are going to see in practice will be political parties hiding behind individuals to support them. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. You see. So I think this decentralization, my friend made another point I wanted to bring up again. When Akufo-Addo introduced the DRIP, frankly, I was excited that perhaps that's the beginning of a long process that will enable the districts to begin to take charge at least of their rural roads. Mahama came and quickly said, look, we are bringing all the equipment to the regional centers. Then he appoints a coordinator in Accra who will be directing how they are used. Completely opposite of the rationale for the DRIP. So I think the politicians, to me, have vested interest in maintaining the status quo. Because after all, whether we wait for 8 months or 6 months before DC is appointed, the party in power still controls. And here you see how the parties are manipulated by themselves and others in terms of appointing. And how can it take 8 months, 6 months to put a DC in place when in fact at the district level, so many things are going on. So for me, we need to quickly change this system, let people elect their own leaders, let the leaders plan their own development. This district assembly common fund that my good friend mentioned should be decentralized right away, not under the control of any political appointee, on and on and on. Because you see, the thinking of some of the politicians is as if without them, nothing can go on in the country. It's a fallacy. Because like this DRIP that we have appointed the national coordinator, you create a whole secretariat to manage these things in the region. Why can't the people on the ground who know what is happening determine how they utilize this equipment? They can set priorities. This road is worse than this. This is an economic lifeline, so we have to do it before. They are on the ground. So I think it's a big issue here. And I think it will take what some scholars say decades ago, what we call committing political suicide, for them to give in to this. In fact, both parties are not truly interested because, you see, with this system, they are able to pacify their supporters with these appointments and many others across board. Then the idea of parliamentarians taking a part 5% of the common fund, parliamentarians have gradually brought themselves to be development agents. They are not, but they are consolidating it with this recent idea of giving them 200,000 cedis for projects, what projects not specified. Then you give 75% of that amount as monetary. I mean, look, our political elite must pick up all the problems we are having in the district, joblessness and all that, is because of how we are managing the resources we have. You see, so I think through the decentralization, at least we recognize that certain districts may not be naturally endowed to do well, but this socialist thinking of this, and what I'm saying, I mean it, because years back in the 90s, when some top politicians were discussing decentralization, one of the things I heard with my own ears was the fear that those areas that are endowed would develop faster than others, but in the socialized system, all of them have to be equal. That's why we are all poor, because we are afraid for some area or some individuals to be rich. You see, this mentality of development is not what will help us to really bring this country forward. Because look, if District A is endowed and does many things, most likely it's going to employ people from outside the district. And then the governments will use its machinery to kind of have a structure where those less endowed can be subsidized in a larger amount than those that are endowed. So there are all kinds of factors to look at in awarding this, not a flat rate, just like even this common fund and the common fund thing, there's a formula for doing that. You see, so I think that our political elite must bite the bullet and understand that before they got to where they were in the districts. So they cannot assume to know better than others who are not in government. For me, it's something that we need to work on it fast, because look, if you leave Accra and go visit other places of our country, you feel sad. All these other areas are dying. People still troop to Accra for basic things. Don't we hear chiefs and others still calling on government to provide toilets? I mean, and the politicians like it that way. See, so I think it's more than simply letting people to elect their DCs or MCs, because that comes along with so many other things that will facilitate the effectiveness of the assemblies providing development to their people.
I see. Prof, very, very interesting point you raised there. I'll come to you now, Dr. Fiadomo. You look at the functions of the MC or DC, and it's a very, very important role. But then you also look at the qualifications to become an MC or a DC, and you don't find academic qualifications or work experience as part of it. However, if people want to become unit committee members or they want to become assembly members, there is the last cut-off academic qualification that they have, what they do as work and how long, etc. Again, if I am going to be the one to be, acting upon the decision taken by these people, and I don't have as much capacity as the people who took the decision do, am I not going to be a square plug in a round hole, Doc? Hello, Dr. Fiadomo.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Did you hear my question, sir?
Yeah, I heard you loud and clear.
Great.
Yes.
Can
so
we hear
your
answer?
question brings to mind the reckless and irresponsible comments recently made by the KMA mayor. Because we now have people who may not necessarily be fit for purpose to occupy the position of chief executive officer. When you go to the corporate world, chief executive officer It's a very serious position that you are the one supposed to direct, manage, and utilize the resources of the entity. But yet, because the chief executive position, like Prof. rightly said earlier on, it is meant to reward political persons who may have worked hard for the party to come to power. In itself, it is not wrong in my opinion. But what it is that they do not take proper time to do due diligence and get persons to occupy those positions. Because there is a case, somebody has just been confirmed by the assembly. You have not even been oriented for that position that you are going to occupy. You've not met your management, you've not met your board, which are the assembly members to even know. I'm not too sure if you even read the handover note from the former mayor. You would have known that when it comes to decongestion exercise, this is how they go about it. But he comes and he changes because he has political patronage. He can make any reckless and irresponsible comment. And that is one of the challenges that we have. Another problem I have with the vetting process that has recently gone past is the fact that it was heavily partisan. Too heavily partisan. I agree that all nominees or candidates for chief executive position must be bona fide members of the NDC. I don't have any problem with that. But these are people who are going to occupy public positions. So you need to get some local government experts, people who know public administration and other things to be part of the vetting committee. So if you carry all politicians to be part of the vetting committee, that is what we are seeing now. Another issue too is the fact that you have crack coordinating directors who have been through the mill. Some have worked for 20 years, 25 years, and they are now coordinating directors. Now you come and superimpose what I will call a novice in public administration over them. So you now have chief executives now coming to learn on the job, which may not necessarily be too bad anyway. But you see that immediately they must hit the ground running. So clearly, that is the challenge that we have. And I believe that when it comes to election, there will be some criteria, as you spoke about, that will know that this is the position. The party, I believe, has qualified persons to occupy those positions. So set a standard criteria to the extent that you are going to occupy a chief executive officer's position. So clearly, that is what is happening. Recently, I went to some of the CEOs, and you realize that you're a CEO. You put there that you have visiting hours, and you give the time for the visiting hours. When the time is up for visiting hours, you yourself, you are not present, and people will be queuing and be waiting. So you see that MPs, even who have been 2-time, 3-time, 4-time MPs, anytime they are elected, they go for orientation and they try to teach them how a parliamentarian should act and behave and what a parliamentarian must know. So when we bring chief executives like this, and no orientation has been done, and the next time we see chief executives going to town, especially so when they themselves know very well that if not for political patronage, they could not be occupying such high offices. So for me, I think that, yes, inching towards the election would be good. Like Prof also said, I also agree that a lot of things will have to change. A lot of constitutional changes will have to be made so that we can benefit from the current system. But I can tell you, I agree with Prof 1,000% that the political elite are not interested in decentralization.
I thank you very much.
They are simply not interested in decentralization. That is why we have the challenge that we have, because it will take the very same persons to be able to amend the laws, especially members of parliament. But they can allocate to themselves funds when they are not development agents. So if you want to now do the right thing or ask them to do the right thing, they will not do it because they want, quote unquote, free money to take in the name of supervising projects. How is it that the money for supervision is higher than the money that's actually meant for the project? And politicians should get to know that the Afro barometer and how people are losing interest and are getting interested in military rulers, there are some of these small things that are happening. Like politicians should not think that they are the best brains in this country. They should never think so. So some of their actions and inactions, we the citizens, we are reading through it and we know what they are doing. So please, politicians, if we say we want to do decentralization and it is captured in our constitution, let's practice it to the latter and get the ordinary people to benefit from the development. So for me, that is what I have to say. For this drip thing, that for me, I think that we are going back to centralization quietly, because now, can you imagine the contract with Zoom Lion, for example? An assembly signs contract with Zoom Lion, yet the assembly does not have the capacity to pay Zoom Lion. Zoom Lion is now paid from DACF at source. And when Zoom Lion is being paid, they do not even validate the report that Zoom Lion presents even with the assemblies, for the assemblies to either concur or not whether the work has been done. And so we say decentralization, we say sanitation issue, and that is why there are insanitary conditions all over us, and waste is swallowing us, because the assemblies have also now taken a back seat because they don't understand why they award the contract and they cannot supervise the contractor, they cannot pay the contractor. Yet somebody sitting at central government should be the one paying the contractor for obvious reasons.
Thank
so for
you.
me, that is where I think we are, and if you want decentralization, let's take it serious and ensure that it works.
I hear you.
Very well.
Dr. Fiadomo, I thank you very much indeed for your time. He's the president of the Chamber of Local Government. Prof, you have the final word. So where do we go from here?
Well, fortunately, we have a constitutional review committee currently. And my hope, and a lot of people have expressed this, is that this committee finally will address decentralization the way it ought to. In other words, all the conversation, the issue we are discussing today, should inform them that Ghanaians want true decentralization. We don't want the centralization of national resources in Accra for them to redistribute, to pay themselves. And look at this thing that my good friend just said about sanitation. You sit in Accra, award contract to somebody to go to a village somewhere to clean up. Sanitation is local. After when we were growing up, there were instances where every week Gongon is beaten, we all go and clean the streets. I'm not saying we should go there much, but that will be something that can be encouraged at the local level. And after the contract, we don't see any cleanliness anywhere in the country. And the politicians pretend that Accra, or somebody comes out, make Accra the best, the cleanest city in Africa. Somebody also say 100 days. All this kind of talk that the politicians give. So I think this ongoing review should be serious to address this issue so that we can make democracy work at the local level. Look, Ghana, our democracy is top-heavy instead of democracy coming from the grassroots. So this idea of elections at the assembly is a way to bring democracy back to the people. Let the people decide who rules them at the district level. Let the people at the district level, through the assembly, make their budget, their plans, set their priorities, raise the funds, supplemented by central government funds, and let them execute it. So, Mr. President, this idea of re-centralizing the DRIP, please reverse it. Give the assemblies the power to begin to take care of their own thing. We don't need to have a coordinator with the secretariat going around the whole country to supervise what, to decide which machine goes where. Please, this is a decision that I think my very good friend the president has made.
Right.
In the interest of decentralization, at least let's begin with the DRIP and see how we manage ourselves.
Thank you, Prof. I'm grateful. Always spending a morning with you. Professor Bafo Ajimanduya is a former senior UN governance expert, and he joined us here to share some nuggets. Helen, so we're not wrong after all. We're not drifting. We're right there in the heart of the conversation.
Certainly.
The two experts have confirmed that, Charlie.
We've been doing our homework.
On a head day.
Absolutely. And I think one of the points that also emanated from this conversation is that maybe our politicians do like how the arrangement is so far. This talk about decentralization, what we're in fact seeing, according to Prof, is re-centralization.
Yeah.
And is there a genuine desire for us to really decentralize our operations? Another point was made that maybe our politicians do want us to look to them for everything.
Right.
Because that's where, that extra power is. But really,
and they even want us to applaud them when they do what we elect them to do.
So I think that point is also very important, that through decentralization, we can empower our local communities. Like I said, if I know exactly who to target, as opposed to going to my MP for this and for that, and I know exactly who my DC is, my MMDCEs are, I can channel my grievances in the appropriate, way, I think it'll be best. But where do we go from here? Where this decentralization agenda is completely off track? How do we drum home that really that is how we move? We move development, always waiting for that central point. Not only is it time wasting, but also that idea of favoritism, like we just had, or that we've just been discussing, is also very pressing.
Anyway, a lot of confusion, isn't it? Those causing the confusion know themselves. We'll take a quick break. When we return from this break, we will head straight to Boku. There's confusion as well. So there's confusion on the administrative level, confusion on the economic level, right? Within the district assembly space.
That's right.
And I'm also confused at this point. I can't find my Jesus film CD. My Jesus film CD. I want to remember exactly how Jesus died. So this book, I enact it well. Have you watched Jesus film before?
I haven't watched one in a long
I have
time.
the CD. I'll find
you
it.
Find it. Oh,
Jesus film CD.
But is this the season? So I'm sure you just turn on your TV, you see a lot of Jesus film.
You don't go to church.
They'll be whipping Jesus. Everybody will be crying. You watch it live. How it happened?
Jesus film.
As if you were there.
Yeah, and how Judas sold him for no coffee.
No, Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie. That's how Betty Megano. Casting lot.
Confusion.
Jesus film. Oh my God. Easter is going to be nice. Don't lose God. Jesus film. That's what I'm talking. Jesus film. Do you know Jesus film? There'll be no confusion in your mind. We'll see you after the break.
Easter weekend with a promise to live life at Fiduciary Valley Resort. Begin the weekend with sumptuous Good Friday